All right. Hi and welcome to From Many People's Strength, the podcast that covers Saskatchewan politics and current events. My name is Cory and my pronouns are he and him.
And my name is David. My pronouns are they and them, and I'm okay with he and him as well.
All right. Well, we have quite a few stories to get through today, so I don't know if we'll do too much preamble.
No guest. It's the first time in a while that we've had no guest, so you're stuck listening to me do a little bit more ranting, I guess.
I'm sure people will be fine with that.
Okay, here's hoping. I still find it weird people want to listen to my opinions on stuff, but I'll take it, I guess. The
Saskatchewan court case for pandemic relief-related tickets is moving forward. So some of the people who were ticketed for violating public health orders, allegedly, are going to court. So this includes 8 people with Saskatoon's Mark Friesen, who is our prominent anti-masker guy in Saskatchewan, and Maxime Bernier, who was here for a political event, as well as Christine Brown, who is an owner of a bar in Lumsden, Saskatchewan. So there's a couple others. I don't know.
It's one of those things that the people who are law and order, rah-rah, the rest of the time, all of a sudden, aren't. Our system is designed to make fighting tickets incredibly difficult. And I'm not just talking about these. Like, if someone gets a traffic ticket, and they feel that they got it unjustly, it's very, very difficult for them to deal with it. You need to go to the courts at a very, very vague time. So basically, you need to take an entire day off work to go in and plead not guilty, otherwise to contest it essentially, and then they set you up with a second court date. So the system is designed so when it's like a $300 ticket, it's more expensive to fight it than just pay the $300 ticket.
Right.
On a $14,000 ticket, I get why they're fighting it. Yeah. And throughout COVID, as much as I am very much not on the side of the yahoos getting these tickets, you know what? If they fight the system and win, it's kind of a win-win for. To some degree, it's a win-win, right? If they lose the court case, you know what? They were breaking the law. They should pay a fine. If they lose the court case, hopefully it creates enough precedent and momentum that it makes it easier for other people to fight against tickets, right?
Yeah.
But again, this seems like it's a pretty cut and dry thing. Health orders exist, right? We if there was... If a health inspector walked into Mark Friesen's establishment and there was rat shit in the kitchen and he's fined for that, I don't think we're going to be hearing a lot of, that violates his civil rights. No. He's violating public health restrictions. Maybe Maxime Bernier, I've heard libertarians say, health inspectors shouldn't exist if someone gets sick from rat shit in the food. The free market will solve the problem by no one going to that restaurant anymore. I think that's a little naive because how do you prove that it was that restaurant where you got food poisoning from? It's sort of a weird libertarian fantasy that that's going to be the solution to things like that. But that said, if this, I was going to say, if this was enough to motivate people on the right to no longer be the, first in line to lick the boots, that would be wonderful. I'm not naive enough to think it is. I think the same people who are fighting these tickets, the second, someone gets a ticket for loitering, they're going to be the first in line to say, well, if they didn't break the law, they'd have nothing to worry about. Right? The homeless person getting a ticket for existing while homeless. That's not a violation of any sort of rights in their mind, but, violating health inspector guidelines that is. So in the same way that the people who for the last 2 years were shouting, my body, my rights, or my body, my choice when it comes to masks, are all of a sudden now, very much pivoting and trying to find ways of doing that. So you'll see the same with this. I just, sorry, it's a bit of a rant, and I don't know, where the end of that thought process goes. I think they're just wasting everyone's time and money.
I think so too. But to your point about them pivoting, like, I wonder what the crossover is for people who are my body, my rights about this stuff, who are now, like you say, protesting in front of the ledge for anti-abortion.
Right.
Because they're motivated now that the U.S. has their Roe versus Wade is being overturned.
I think that Venn diagram is pretty darn close to a perfect circle. I think you'll have a little bit of shading on one side or the other, but probably not too much. But for those who are ideologically consistent on that, more power to you. There are, like I said, some pro-choice libertarians out there. They're not non-existent.
Yep.
So yeah, we'll see where all of that goes. I don't think we have that as a specific story to talk about, because I don't know if there's a huge Saskatchewan component yet. But
no, there was nothing there except I saw Scott Moe made a statement about abortion not being on the table as a thing, but also he's still pro-life.
Yeah. So what he's going to do is continue to, I think we've talked about this before. He's going to continue to slowly erode the reproductive rights without actually making a big deal of it. He'll maintain his own ideological ground by making it more and more difficult to get reproductive health care in the province, making it so you can only get it in Regina and Saskatoon, make it so there's no official policy that prevents it after a certain point, but just not allowing doctors to do it.
Regina Man wants the government to change the SGI legislation after a head-on collision. So Chad Ritzko was in a head-on collision in 2018, and the other driver died, and Ritzko's son, who was 8 years old, had a serious brain injury, and Chad Ritzko suffered broken vertebra in his neck and sternum and various other injuries, and hasn't been able to work since due to these injuries. And he's asking the government to change the legislation so that he can sue for pain and suffering or lost wages or whatever it happens to be. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, pain and suffering compensation. So I don't know if it's a good idea to change the laws in this way, or if the way it is now is good. I know that there's problems with it. It's not perfect. But I don't know.
It's one of those things where right now, because it's no fault, there's very, very limited circumstances where you can sue another driver for pain and suffering. Basically, it's the idea being, rather than having fights in court, SGI rather just covers everything that needs to be covered. He probably would have had his deductible waived, but that's trivial in a case like this compared to all of his other costs. The idea being, you can still sue for pain and suffering if the other driver, if the at-fault driver can be proved to be at fault in court and was either impaired, criminally negligent, or intentionally caused the collision. But the problem is they have to be able to be found guilty, and because the other driver died, that can't be done. So it's this weird loophole where if someone is drinking and driving and causes an accident, and that wasn't the case in this, I think the accusation or the allegation is that it was an intentional accident.
Yeah, I think they said that SGI investigators found that it was intentional.
So if the other driver had lived, he could have been sued, Ritzko, could have sued for $200,000.
Right.
but because the other guy died, he can't.
Yeah.
And that's like, I kind of agree. That seems like a weird loophole. It seems like one of those things that also is probably not going to come up a lot.
Yeah, that's right. Like if you did change the law, it's not going to result in a bunch of frivolous lawsuits showing up, right?
Yeah, I don't think so. And I don't even know if that's I don't know if that's a thing where you need to even change the law, or if it's a change of policy. Like it might be a thing SGI can do unilaterally without there being a law. I'm not a lawyer. Right. I don't know. So be very clear on that. I'm not saying for sure, but I suspect it may fall under the grounds of something SGI could just do. And if not, it seems like it's a relatively straightforward thing for the government to pass. I don't see a lot of opposition to that, and I don't know exactly why there would be. Yeah.
Yeah, according to the minister's office, the ability, no-fault injury programs remove the ability to sue for pain and suffering and instead redirect money that would have been paid in those settlements to provide much more comprehensive benefits. So the minister's office is added that introducing limiting circumstances to sue was intended as a deterrent for impaired drivers or for drivers who would intentionally cause harm. Like none of this seems to really affect this guy's particular situation. And, you know, like it seems like he still fits in this weird niche.
Yeah. And I guess I don't know what the solution being though, too, because like the whole point is the only time you can sue for pain and suffering is if the other person is found guilty of a crime, one of two crimes, basically, or three, I guess, the severe negligence one, but like drinking and driving, intentionally causing the accident, or the extreme negligence or severe negligence. I'm not sure the exact terminology, but so you introduce the ability to sue in those very, very limited circumstances, but leave open this gap where if you were drinking and driving, or if you caused it intentionally, or if it was negligence, you like your estate essentially is off the hook if you were to die.
Seems weird. It seems weird.
That seemed like I said, and as much as I'm not a big fan of the Sask Party, when they introduced the ability to sue in those very, very limited circumstances, leaving that out seems far more like an oversight than something intentional or sinister.
Right.
Like that, like Hanlon's razor. Like I'm wary of using Hanlon's razor when it comes to conservatives in general in the last decade or two, because the idea, never attribute to malice what can be adequately explained by incompetence. I think they've weaponized that to be like the whole dopey dope. We're sort of
I didn't realize.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm wary about using that most of the time, but I think it probably applies on this. What I find, again, it's where I do have frustration with the Sask Party, is this seems like the minister had a really easy, like, I don't say out, but this seems like a no-brainer for the minister to say this, like, when the legislation was passed, this was the intent. This seems like it's a technical oversight. Heck, if you want to sort of double down and appeal to your base, you can then grumble red tape, grumble bureaucracy.
Right.
The Sask Party will fight for you, etc. Like that seems like an easy win, and not an expensive one, because at the end of the day, you're opening it up to a $200,000.
Right.
Like, because again, it's going to be SGI that is likely on the hook for, right? Because when, he's the person who passed would have had the liability insurance and all of that. So again,
it's not like millions of dollars that this one guy can get. It's not many cases that it can happen over like,
no.
So I don't think it's an easy, hey, yes, we're going to do this for you.
Yeah. And like, what's the road fatalities in Saskatchewan? In 2019, 71 people were killed in fatalities. I have to assume the not all of those 71 would have been themselves the drunk driver or themselves the one causing intention. Like, even just by averages, if like at least half of them were the innocent party, like
right.
And then in many more cases, there was probably everyone who was innocent. Sometimes there are just things that happen, patch of ice in winter, etc. So, anyway,
Yes.
you're not dealing with millions upon millions of dollars. And
Yeah.
it seems like a weird, again, it's just like a weird loophole. And I don't know why they would come out and be like, here's why we can't do anything, as opposed to coming out and being, oh yeah, this was an oops, let's just fix it. But I just pathologically incapable of admitting any sort of oversight or mistake.
No, that's right.
Seems just bizarre to me.
SaskTel is investing $337 million into Saskatchewan in 2022 and 2023. So they're going to be investing in infrastructure, trying to expand and shore up various technologies. And $82.2 million is going towards fiber for the Fiber to Premises program and the Fiber to Business program, which is great. I mean, I am currently now on fiber optic internet, and it's way better than so I'm quite happy with this.
Yep.
We've got $110.6 million is going for 5G development and wireless network enhancements, which we definitely need in some areas. And then $79.3 million is going to wireline network growth and enhancements.
Mm-hmm.
And then $64.9 million going to improve customer services and operations. And although I have to say, like, the last few times that I've been dealing with SaskTel, their services have vastly improved already.
Yeah. I've said before, I think both 5G and broadband internet in homes should be a public utility. So this is still good. I think we need to, I don't think it'll ever happen. I think we need to transition from it being a crown corporation to an actual public utility.
Yes.
I think that's
a service rather than a
I think at this point, internet is as much a vital piece of infrastructure as, honestly, even as like roads or maybe not water, but like up there. Certainly more. My pet. Where I am a right winger on the other end of the spectrum, certainly more of a necessity to modern living than Canada Post is. I'd much rather see Canada Post privatized and internet services be made a public utility. We could swap them out,
switch them around.
So, but yeah, I think this is good. Spending on infrastructure is good. Credit where credit is due. SaskTel, like, again, where I'm saying would be good to have it be a public utility. SaskTel's making money, like they're doing quite well. Yeah. When it comes to things like cell service, Canada is the most expensive country in the world. Yes. I don't think there is a single country on this planet that has more expensive cell phone service than Canada. Like, that's not hyperbole. I actually think we are the highest. The US is a little bit less expensive than Canada, but they're near the top as well. We have remarkably expensive, and Saskatchewan is the cheapest in Canada, at least. So we do see that at least having a crown corporation, if not a public utility, helps drive the prices down. And the fact that Canada is so remarkably both deregulated and concentrated. The fact that we don't have a lot of competition and we are not overly regulated certainly shows in the prices that we pay for things like internet and cell phone service. So, but I guess that means they have, when it's a crown, it means they have actual money to expend on the infrastructure piece of it.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. I guess the other small point on this, I know it'll never get brought up. However, we do know, and if you look at SaskTel's budget and look at their numbers, all of this fiber optic infrastructure and cell phone towers and cabling and all of that that's being installed in rural areas is being paid for by the profit they get from urban areas. I really, really wish the people who consistently vote against the dreaded socialism understood that if they are living in a rural area in the middle of nowhere, all of this infrastructure that they benefit from is being paid for by those evil socialists who live in Regina and Saskatoon and the other major cities in the province. So.
Yeah. No, that's right.
Because it costs 10 times as much to send cabling out to the one person living in a remote area as it does per person to send it to 100 people living in an apartment. Well, and more than 10 times as much, right? So, and they don't pay more because, again, it's a crown rather than a for-profit company. So, anyways, it's one of those points that I would be remiss if I didn't mention at least briefly when we were talking about major expenditures on infrastructure.
Nope, that's fair. Lumsden using solar energy to become Saskatchewan's most sustainable small town. And Mayor Brian Matheson thinks that any other municipality could do the same. So this article they start off kind of just talking about how the science is clear about how we need to take care of our environment. And ultimately, we do have to switch to renewables or some other type of energy use. And so Lumsden has switched, by and large, to renewable energy. Yep. So I thought this was amazing.
Yeah. It falls into that category of stop saying it can't be done to the people who are doing it.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. And again, one of the things he says is it's kind of like what I've said on this podcast. I don't know how many hundreds of times, my broken record over and over again. Even if you are a horrible person and don't care about the future of the planet and actively don't care if your grandchildren perish in a hellscape of climate change, if that's not a thing that you're worried about, and all you care about is dollars and cents, this is still the right thing to do.
Yeah, that's right.
And the mayor talks about that, right? The economics are clear, but he goes on and he says, I don't describe myself as an environmentalist, but we need to make upgrades. Going solar makes sense. He literally says this is all about the money. Right. He's not hiding that fact, right? You can keep paying money, or you can find ways to reduce costs. And renewable energy is a great way to reduce costs.
Yeah.
They
have. They started their transition in 2017 with a project in the River Park Community Building. They have 15,000 kilowatt hours of energy per year based on solar panels, which translates into 54% of that building's electricity usage, and has reduced their monthly bills, and they're projected to save the town $21,000 over 20 years. So,
So there's an upfront cost that pays for itself in the long run. It means they can save money on the sewage treatment. It's all in all just
a really good
story. We don't get a lot of them. Good for Lumsden.
That's right.
I like the thing that they talk about at the end of the story about how change is contagious. That homeowners in the community have started adding solar panels to the home. A local business offers a free electric vehicle charging station. Even before there was government intervention, the grocery store just stopped using plastic bags and switched to reusable ones. I'm a little ishy on that myself because I don't know if there's a huge environmental impact there, but even still, it's the idea of it. It builds, it builds the mindset. They've switched to, this is my favorite part of the whole story, they've switched to an environmentally friendly snowmaking machine in their biathlon training center. I didn't know Lumsden had a biathlon training center, and I think that is awesome.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
So it's wonderful. And it talks about how it does improve relations with First Nations communities in the region. The First Nations communities themselves have been adding solar to their communities, both in Cowessess and the Muscadet First Nations. I think actually Cowessess was, even prior to Lumsden by a good measure. So, we get a lot of clear skies in Saskatchewan. And so it's a good story all around. there are environmental impacts of solar as well. It's not completely environmentally non-impactful, but we know it's smaller than it is to use fossil fuels. And we'll, I'm excited to continue seeing where this goes. We also have a lot of open space in Saskatchewan. The solar panels that Lumsden is using are the size of 2 football fields.
Right. And there is a picture in the article if people are interested in seeing it. It's quite. I think it looks great.
Huge, yeah, and it looks great. I think so too. But if you think about like the size of 2 football fields, we have that in Saskatchewan. There are we don't have the excuse of it uses up land. Right. We've got that. Like that's a thing we have in spades. And 2 football fields worth is a lot of space in an urban environment, and that is not a lot of space when you are dealing with, it could have been farmland or could have been used for agriculture or something as well. But for the most part, that's a tiny, tiny corner. When
you think about how much space is just out there not being used at all, that's nothing.
I wanted to mention that part of it just in case someone's it could have been used for corn. No, it's a small fraction of it.
I'm sure it could have been used for something, but I'm sure they know what their town and where things are being used and whatnot. So, this story. So SAS Power announces competition for largest solar facility in the Estevan region. Largest ever wind generation facilities to be added to the power grid as well. So it's kind of a competition to see which vendor is going to build the province's largest solar facility, and it's going to be down in the Estevan area, looking at 100 megawatts, and is 10 times the capacity of Saskatchewan's current largest solar facility. Will provide power for up to 25,000 homes. So, we're just full of great environmental actions by SAS Power and other. This is just
good.
Plain old,
Well, and the plan is to grow as well. So they talk about SAS Power their intention is to connect the 2 giant wind generation facilities to the grid itself.
Right.
So. I think the intention is to be able to power 187,000 homes by 2030. That's huge. So
that's amazing.
And I don't know why. I don't know why this stuff. I do know why. Never mind. I was going to say when you have Scott Moe coming out and saying I don't care.
Yeah.
Why you don't at least talk about this stuff.
You could at least bring this up and see, yes, we're doing things. Things are happening.
Again, more worried about, impressing the guys with the rolling coal trucks as opposed to actually making the province marketable and more economically feasible as a global exporter.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? Like it's like spray painting swear words on the side of your small business to impress your buddies, even though it's scaring away customers. That is and again, I need to bring the negative in.
That sounds like something I would do.
No, but it's what you're doing, right? It's Scott Moe's buddies, his base doesn't, thinks he's being a big tough guy by doing the whole, I don't care about the environment. While all of the we are a net exporter, we are an exporting province. We are a business. We're not a business, but if we think about sort of the grand scheme of things, if the whole run things like a business, we are the ones trying to sell to others. In which case, care about your customers who don't want to hear your premier saying, I don't care about the environment, and care less about your buddies who are going to think you're a cool guy for spray painting swear words on the side of your business, right?
Yeah, that's right. But it makes me look so cool that I don't care.
Yeah. Sigh. Anyways, it was a positive news story. I didn't want to turn it negative. I did anyways. My apologies.
We
can use that to transition into the next story because the next one isn't as positive.
Bad one next. That's right. Husky Oil was fined $600,000 for releasing harmful substance into Saskatchewan waterway. Husky Oil was fined $600,000 for releasing produced water, is what it is. It's salt water. It's a byproduct of pulling oil out of the ground and working with it. And produced water is pretty nasty stuff. Like,
yeah.
It's like if you ever heard the term "salt the fields" in a war case or a siege. Like, they do that because nothing will grow there. When you add, so salt water does the same thing. It makes it so that nothing is going to grow wherever it goes.
Yeah.
And it was found because there was dead vegetation,
miles
and
of dead vegetation,
dead fish, and like this is it's pretty fucking bad, actually.
Yep.
Like, I mean, I'm kind of laughing because it's so bad that it actually makes me mad, and I have to kind of.
Yeah. And again, combined with we found out about it because they got caught, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not oh shit, this happened, fuck, we should come clean. It was discovered like it came after the fact because they got caught. So.
Yeah, and the thing with stuff like this is like actually, I know that oil spills look worse than a saltwater spill.
And the wastewater spills, yeah.
But you can clean up oil. Saltwater the land that it got on won't grow anything for an extended period of time. Like, it's not just today that it won't grow anything. It's going to be next year it won't grow anything there. Like, it's really, really bad.
Yep.
So I'm glad that came across my feed and that we could at least highlight it. I'm glad they got fined $600,000, but at the same time, for a company like Husky, that means nothing to them. It's a drop in the bucket, but
their name is added, and this is the very, very end. Their name is added to the Environmental Offenders Registry, which wasn't a thing I've heard of, and I think I want to look into a bit more at some point.
Right.
Maybe we can talk about that more in a future episode as well. But I'm happy that exists, I guess. Like, it seems like that's a good thing. I'm curious as to how that impacts things like permits and requests for expansion and like environmental impact statements and that in the future. Like, if this is an actual thing where your history and record of doing shitty things impacts the company above and beyond just the fine, I'd actually be pretty impressed that that's
right. Yeah, for sure. Okay. Survey suggests 27% of Saskatchewan residents changed their political views during the pandemic, and of those, 70% said they changed their views to become more right-leaning. And this was a survey of 401 provincial residents by telephone on landlines and cell phones, so not just landlines, but between March 7th and March 16th, with a margin error of almost 5%, 19 times out of 20. So I'm not sure about how much we can take out of this, except to say like that it's not surprising to me that the people of this province became more right-leaning during the pandemic.
Yeah, I guess I have to admit I was somewhat surprised.
Yeah.
I guess I shouldn't be by now. I kind of had thought the people who were right-leaning were already there. And the people who weren't already right-leaning.
I guess it depends on what you mean by more right-leaning, right? Like, everybody's going to interpret that a certain way. Were they just conservatives and now they're fascists?
Well, I was going to say, like, were they? It says changed, but what does that mean? Like, did you change from left-leaning to right-leaning, or did you just change and become more left-leaning if you were already left-leaning and become more right-leaning? And one of those things being like, if it's just you became more of what you already were, and that, again, I mean that on both the left and the right, then that makes sense that 70% of people would have said that. I don't think that number could have meant change from left to right or from right to left. I don't think.
No. Yeah, it had to be people on the right pulling more to the right.
Yeah.
So 61% of respondents did say they did not change their views over the last couple of years. So that means that we are still a majority conservative province with, various other factions around. But yeah, so there's some charts here. It's got a number of, I think it says, a survey from the Canadian Hub for Applied and Social Research at the University of Saskatchewan in partnership with CBC Saskatchewan. Surveyed 401 Saskatchewan residents and found about half of respondents were either somewhat or very satisfied with the government of Saskatchewan's pandemic response, and about half were somewhat or very dissatisfied. So that seems really weird to me. How can you be satisfied with this government's response to the pandemic? No matter what, that seems really weird, no matter what side you're on.
Yeah. This goes back to what we talked about 2 weeks ago, though, in that there's absolutely no incentive for this government to allow any sort of inquiry. Right. Because if you just keep saying over and over and over again, we did everything right, there's nothing we could have done differently. We did everything right, there's nothing we could have done differently. People will eventually believe it, especially your base will believe it. Yeah. So the idea of, hey, let's look into what could have been done differently, so if something comes up like this next time, we have more information, is not a politically viable statement. And like that would require you actually care about governing as opposed to your primary care being winning elections.
Right.
Which again, my biases are coming in here, obviously, but conservative governments in this country, and many of the left-leaning governments as well, to be fair, but especially the conservative governments in this country, have made it very, very clear their interest in governing is very minimal. Their interest is definitely far more in governing is the thing we do in order to win elections. And if the way in which we govern doesn't win us elections, we don't care. We will never do what's in the best interest of the province if we don't get recognition for it at the voting booth, which I guess is a flaw of democracy. Like that is sort of one of the things that democracy leads you to. Yeah,
this type of democracy definitely.
But again, even if they had done 90% of things perfect, like if governing well was actually your priority, you would want to do an investigation on what could be done differently next time.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
But that's not
to fix that 10%.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that's not the goal. The goal is to win the election and confirm the biases of your voters in whatever way it can.
Absolutely. And again, I think there's no incentive for this government to talk about the reality of how they actually handled this. Because no matter how many facts you present to the people who are Sask Party supporters, it won't sway them because, I don't trust Global News, it's just a lefty news organization. I don't trust the CBC, they're communists. I don't trust CTV, they're left-wing, they're owned by, so-and-so, right? Like it's...
Right, yeah.
They can always come up with a reason why the news reports can't be trusted.
Yep.
But if you actually do an inquiry, they probably wouldn't believe that either. But again, it's a way of sowing doubt that they don't need to sow.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
for sure. It's interesting. You were not surprised by the initial survey itself, but we're sort of surprised by those two pie charts around people thinking the pandemic, and I was the complete opposite.
Right? Yeah. I'm blown away that people across the country, not just here, aren't pissed off at their governments and saying like, you fucked this up. You didn't hold us, you put economics ahead of our well-being. Because every province did it. Even the ones that were better than here, they still all made those calls, and it still cost people that, it still cost people their lives, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely it did. Yeah. I guess I'm not surprised because, again, if you say a lie often enough, if you say there's nothing we could have done differently, we did the best we could over and over and over again, and the only people you're hearing say something different are people you don't trust.
Yeah. So that does seem to be like, I guess, my naivete still. Like, I still hold on to that idea that if somebody does something wrong, we can all look at it and recognize it, but I guess not.
Well, it's the classic, like, we talk about how the left could agree on 99.9% of things and will tear each other to shreds over the 0.1% difference.
Yeah.
Whereas the right, as long as you're on the same team, you're going to, like, the ultra conservative, like, fathers knows best, borderline fascist supporters, and the libertarian, like, you know, government is evil, don't tread on me, are somehow under the same tent because we're on the same team, so we can support each other. And it's not like they're compromising; they just somehow find a way of implementing the worst of both. But
it's the truth. So it's chaos. Overdose prevention organizations highlighted a continued need for government funding. So Saskatchewan's 2 overdose prevention sites are calling for more funding from the provincial government because the number of people who are using them has increased. So on Thursday, this article came out on April 29th. So it was before that. Representatives from Regina's Friendship Center and Saskatoon's Prairie Harm Reduction visited the legislation to apply for more pressure for their funding needs. We've had lots of talks about addiction services and harm reduction in the past. And obviously we're both in favor of these kinds of models and think that the government should be funding them. So, don't know.
Again, broken record time for me. And you know what's coming as soon as I say I'm a broken record.
Even if you get rid of all the moral,
yeah, right. Like it's true though. Like this nonsense that the right wing wants to run governments like a business is utter bullshit. Because if you had a business where there was a cost to your business in the tens of millions of dollars, and you could reduce that cost for cents on the dollar.
Yep.
And you didn't because you were ideologically opposed to the idea of harm reduction or ideologically opposed to, like, your shareholders would vote you out.
Yeah.
There is no way shareholders of a privately traded company would put up with the type of management that the voters of this province put up with from the SAS party government.
Right.
It is utter ridiculousness that they would rather spend money on emergency visits, overcrowded hospitals, death, than violate a puritanical notion that opposes harm reduction. And because make no mistake, it is 100% rooted in Puritanism rather than any sort of economics, science, sociology, like all of that.
Yeah, it's just the backwards condemnation of addictive people, right?
Yeah, the evidence is so cut and dry with this.
Yeah,
it's just so, and I guess I'm literally at a loss for words because it's so obvious.
Right. Yeah.
And like I'm friends with people who work in harm reduction, so like I'm biased. I'm 100% biased, but I hear the stories, and like we don't even comprehend the costs that this puts on the cities where we're not getting the funding that we need. Because it's not just the hospitals and the morgues that face added costs for not doing this. It's every single other establishment that people go to try and find a safe place to give into their addictions. Yeah. And so instead of having facilities that are designed to deal with a specific healthcare problem, because again, addictions is a healthcare issue, not a criminal issue. We criminalize it, but it needs to be treated as a healthcare issue. So what we do is we funnel people out of specialized healthcare facilities into private businesses, into public parks, into libraries, into all of these other community spaces that then become less usable for other people as well. Because
Yeah. And that's when people start getting pissed, right? Is like, they're seeing needles in the parks and they're seeing addicted people in the parks. And then they get mad and then they still hold back they still vote for a government that won't fund harm reduction centers.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you want your parks to not have people who are addicted to drugs doing drugs in the park, then you need to have these centers. Just like, people are going to do drugs. This is how this works.
Like, if you actually don't want people doing drugs that are harmful to them, there's solutions for that too. They're not the ones that the Sask Party government tries.
No.
Those solutions are create solid public infrastructure, create housing first homelessness initiatives. It's
that's right.
Ensure economic viability for people in marginalized communities. It's breaking cycles of violence in marginalized communities. Like it's investing the money that way. And again, cents on the dollar with your ROI on all of those things as well.
Yeah.
But if you're not doing those, then you have to, at the very least, understand that there are going to be people who are finding ways of escaping. And again, this is, a point we've made on the show before when it comes to harm reduction. We have hundreds, if not thousands, of addiction safe consumption sites in this province. They're called bars. Like, bars are a safe consumption site for alcohol, and alcohol is just as addictive and used just as frequently as an escape, and used just as frequently in problematic ways as other chemical substances are. It's just that one has somehow broken free of the puritanical mindset. And even it, not completely. But again, we treat alcohol very, very differently from how we treat a variety of other chemicals. And it's hypocrisy, and it's causing people to die.
Yeah. So Saskatchewan is raising the minimum wage to $13 this fall, $14 in 2023, and $15 in 2024. So they listened to people? Question mark. They realized that the minimum wage was not enough, but so it's an improvement. Yes. I don't want to say it's not. Obviously, it's more money, but I have two things here. First, prices don't go up because the minimum wage goes up.
No.
Everybody who believes that is wrong. Stop saying it. Read anything on economics and how this works. That's not what happens.
Both in theory and in practice. There's solid economic theory around why it doesn't, and what would need to happen in order for minimum wage increases to drive up prices. Because there are certain circumstances in which the theory holds that it would drive them up. We are nowhere near those circumstances. Right. And also in practice, we have seen in countless jurisdictions that just not
doesn't happen.
Yeah, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah. And also, I'm insulted on behalf of the workers of Saskatchewan, the minimum wage workers of Saskatchewan, because this should have been done 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Yep.
$15 an hour in 2 years from now is way too late. In 2 years, it needs to be $20 an hour. But I guess we are where we are.
Yeah. And it amounts to an 8-9%, 7-9, obviously the percentage goes down because it's going to be $1 divided by the smaller number, right? But you're looking at, increases that are larger than inflation. So that's good.
If only we'd had increases the year before.
Yeah. And once again, I think your starting point really should be higher than $15 an hour in 2024. But what I would love to see is, at the very, very, very least, these increases automatically tied to inflation, and that minimum wage cannot increase by less than inflation.
Yeah. So then
you're something that increase by more, so we can actually catch up to where we should be.
Yeah. And then you're not worried about waiting for the government to be like, hey, yeah, we feel like raising the minimum wage right now.
Yeah. And I would like to, again, there are a variety of ways of measuring inflation. The consumer price index, like the CPI, tends to be one of the most common ones. I would very much like to see things like this tied to an inflation index that extracts luxury goods. Because one of the things we've seen is, like, when we look at inflation as a metric, and again, I've talked about this before, inflation is not one statistic, right? It's an amalgamation of thousands or millions of statistics because different sectors increase in price at different rates.
Right.
So we look at, okay, well, no one only buys one thing, so we look at this as in aggregate. And that aggregate, which again, you have to do that, but those aggregates often will include luxury items. And what we've seen over the last several decades is luxury items are not increasing at the same rate that staple items are. And in fact, for a lot of things like consumer electronics, you're seeing them decrease in value. I can go and buy like a 32-inch TV right now is considered a crappy TV, right? In a lot of circles. And you can probably go out and buy a 32-inch TV for $199 probably. I don't know the exact price, right? Give or take, wait for one on sale. Get a 54-inch TV in some places now for $300, $350 when they go on sale. Yep. So these TVs that were $10,000 10 years ago are now $300. That artificially lowers inflation, right? So the inflation as a number is shown to be a smaller number because of consumer electronics specifically, but luxury goods in general. Whereas food could double in price over that same window, right, and its impact on inflation is mitigated by, again, luxury items either not increasing at the same rate, staying stagnant, or even dropping in prices in some categories. Right. So I would love to see, when we talk about minimum wage, again, this is my pipe dream, but creating an index that we link in minimum wage to housing, food, healthcare, but like the healthcare that Canadians actually have to pay for, so supplementary healthcare, like
dental and eye care and
prescription, and other sort of health items, but like items that are critical that you don't sort of have discretionary considerations over. Now, don't get me wrong. This is in no way, shape, or form me saying or even implying that anyone on minimum wage doesn't deserve luxury items in their life. They absolutely do. Right. Part of the frustration of having criminally low minimum wage is it feeds into this attitude that if you're on minimum wage, you should live a life of misery and
abject poverty. Yeah, that's right.
Like, that's bullshit. So this is not me saying that they shouldn't be entitled to luxury items, but what it is me saying is what we see is an inflation that people making $30 an hour face is a lower rate of inflation, than people making $13 an hour face. So as we adapt our minimum wage, as we ideally put measures in place to link minimum wage to inflation, we try and link it to the actual inflation someone making $15 an hour faces.
Yeah.
Again, this is my pipe dream. I like that's an end goal type situation that for now, even just getting it linked to inflation and saying the minimum that minimum wage increases by should be linked to inflation. Again, you can increase it by more because I think we have some catching up to do. But yeah, sorry, rant
that
over.
Was perfect.
My apologies.
All right. You can find us at anchor.fm/frommanypeoples. Our Twitter is at skpoliticspod. We are also on Facebook at facebook.com/frommanypeoplesstrengthpod. The show notes will be at my blog at skepticalleftistpod.wordpress.com. And you can email us at frommanypeoples@gmail.com. And finally, you can buy us a coffee. If you like, buymeacoffee.com/frommanypeoples. Once again, thank you so much for joining me, David.
Thank you so much, Cory, both for all of the technology work that you do, the editing, the sound stuff, the making sure that I'm not having a whistle and a hiss on my end, and also keeping me on track so that my rants don't just ramble on and fill 3 hours instead of just the one that you've allotted us. So I appreciate you in every role you play. Once again, hope you have a great couple weeks, and talk to you in 2 weeks.
You bet.
Okay, but if we're going to skip the story on the Buffalo Party, I am just going to say I love the fact that it's like, we're doing great. We don't have 1,000 members yet, but we're doing great. That is my summary of that story. Right? Minimum wage.
Yeah, that's right.